Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Space. Today, we're talking about Surface Duo, and specifically what you can do with a Surface Duo for developers who are working with Xamarin and .NET. So I'd like to welcome our speakers today. We have Craig Dunn and Shane Neuville, who are joining us as well. Greetings, gentlemen.
Thanks, Brian. How's it going?
Hello.
Thanks. Good, thanks. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? So starting with Craig.
Sure. So my name is Craig Dunn. I work on the Surface Duo developer experience team. So I spend all of my time, or a lot of my time, reaching out to developers and showing them what they can do with the Surface Duo on all the platforms that we support.
Sweet. Great. And Shane?
Hello. My name is Shane Neuville, and I'm on the Xamarin.Forms team. So I did a lot of work on the Duo SDKs with Craig. I also do a lot of work over in the shell space, and we're starting to ramp up on a lot of really exciting .NET MAUI bits as well. So a lot of really exciting things coming out of the .NET MAUI Xamarin space right now.
Cool. Looking forward to see more about that. So to begin, we actually have a little video, which for those of you who might not be familiar with Surface Duo, this will give you a nice introduction and what the dual screens look like. It's awfully cool. We can kick off the video.
Hello? You ready?
Awfully cool. I love that. I'd have to change the ringtone right away, though. Other than that, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's amazing. I remember back in the olden days, a conference called Comdex in Las Vegas, where Bill Gates got up on a stage, and they showed this sort of animated video of what the future might look like back in 1995. And it actually had something that looked like the Surface Duo. So, although this is new and obviously Android and things like that could have never been conceived at the time, it really did. It's been a long way in the works, I guess, that form factor at least. So really, really looking forward to seeing what developers can do with that. If you notice in the video, there were some third-party tools, some third-party apps. And of course, you can write pretty much anything you need for the dual screens. So I guess we can dive right into to talking about that. And I believe, Craig, you're up first. Is that correct?
Yeah. So interesting callback to Comdex, Brian. If people want to check out YouTube and Google, Microsoft Courier, I think, is the video that you're talking about. And it very much was one of those ahead of its time kind of concepts that featured foldable devices, pen interaction, all the things that really we're bringing to market on the Surface Duo now. So there's plenty of videos around if you want to research them, get a blast from the past.
Very cool stuff. Maybe I'll look up a link and put it in the chat here. By the way, just so everyone knows, we do have interactive chat here. So if you're watching this on Learn TV, please do ask questions. We would like it to be interactive. We have some polls as well, which we can release a little bit later. But for now, we'll dive into Craig's session here.
Great. Thanks, Brian. So one of the things that probably didn't get covered in the video, although there's a lot of information packed in there, is really explicitly the fact that the Surface Duo is an Android device. So it does have the Microsoft logo on the cover, but inside it's running Android, that the regular Android that everyone knows and loves. Apps come through Google Play. All of Microsoft Office, all of the first-party apps are on there. All of the Google apps are on there. So when you get the device out of the box, you get an amazing Android experience ready to go. And when you use the phone, when you use the device in a single screen, you maybe pull it out of your pocket. It's basically just like any other Android device. All of the apps that you have built or downloaded already are going to work just like they currently do. But then the opportunity, the real power of the Surface Duo, it happens when you open it up and you have two screens available. And there's a couple of different ways that becomes powerful. And it all starts with the postures that the device can be put into. So it can be flipped. So it's behaving just like a regular device with a single screen, and you can interact with the apps that way. Or it can be open. And in that scenario, you've got a wide screen, which can be multitasking. So you can have two apps, one on each side. Or you can have a single app spanning over both screens. So you get a lot more screen real estate. You can do a lot more stuff. But it's not only that. People are going to be using the phone vertically. And so they're going to have two screens, one on top of the other. So they get a lot more vertical space. And each of these postures, whether it's like a single screen or a dual screen like this or a dual screen like this, offers different opportunities for you as an app developer to create new experiences for your customers, to get them excited about using your app and get them excited about using dual screen devices. So I'm going to quickly run through maybe a little bit of inspiration, what user experience patterns you might want to adopt for your app to really take advantage of the Surface Duo. And then later on today, we're going to look at how that actually works, developing in Visual Studio. And Shane has a ton of code and samples to show us as well. So these are the 5 key patterns that we've identified and kind of encourage people to look at your app and your app's user interface through these lenses to see how you might extend your user experience for the Surface Duo. So the first one is extended canvas, and it's kind of the most obvious. You have two screens, so just use all of the screen real estate. It works great for spreadsheets, it's great for drawing, it's great for maps. And, there's just a few small caveats of things that you can do to make the experience really special in these scenarios. So if you've got a map opening up, for example, don't center the pin in the middle of the two screens. Move it to the side so that it's centered or it's visible on one of the screens. And if you're showing a sheet like Excel, you can really help the user on their experience by aligning the columns with the hinge down the middle. So things snap easily to one side or the other of that, makes it easier to read, easier to navigate. The next pattern is list detail. Now, this is kind of obvious. This is a pattern that already exists for kind of single screen devices. But on a single screen device, you're used to the information stacking. So you have a list, whether it's your email list or your list of tweets or whatever, and you tap on one and then it expands to fill the full screen. But on a two-screen device, you can actually tap and have it show up on the other screen. So you have a much more interactive experience. It's much more easy to browse your list and zoom in as you like into the single detail screen. Same for photos, same for scheduling. There's all sorts of apps that fit this list detail pattern. And side by side, it makes a lot of sense having zoomed in on the right. One of the interesting things about this pattern, though, is it doesn't necessarily follow that you want to repeat that pattern when the device is vertical. So you could consider having the list on the top and the detail on the bottom. But if you think about the way people are using the device and why they might turn the screen, they might want to zoom in on the detail. So you could choose to have the list on the left and the detail on the right in this mode. But when you turn the device, just use up the whole screen. Go to an extended canvas and just zoom in so that they can maximize the amount of information visible. So Outlook, for example, is a really good one. You want to zoom in, you want to see the whole mail and scroll through it, and then go back if you want to go back to the list. The next one is a 2-page pattern. It's really sophisticated. It's really sophisticated pattern. There's content on each page, and you can kind of scroll through it, which is obviously great for book reading apps, for manuals, for kind of anything that involves reading through content. The posture when the device is held like this is really, really ideal for consuming written content. So if you're presenting anything like that in your app, whether it's books, magazines, comics, anything really that wants to replicate a real world reading experience, it really looks great on the Surface Duo. And the same caveat goes for this sort of reading experience as the list view. When you're holding the device vertically, consider just zooming in and using the whole 2 screens for 1 page of content. So really adapting the user experience depending on the orientation of the device. Dual view is the next pattern that's going to be common for certain types of applications. So this is using the 2 screens to help the user by showing 2 views of the same information. So the top example in my slide is a list of addresses that's simultaneously being rendered on the map on the right. The middle example is, a document with and without markup. And the bottom example is a shopping example where you're comparing products. So the customer now has 2 screens. Previously, when they were doing these things, they were tabbing between 2 views, or they were opening 2 websites and skipping between those tabs. But the Surface Duo lets you just show things both side by side. So use that capability and expand the amount of information available for your customers. And the last one is companion pane, which is a different way of thinking about how to use the extra screen real estate. So it's good for like a photo editing app, for example, where previously you might have the photo taking up most of the screen and all of the options like the little widgets for changing contrast and so on pop up or pop over the photo maybe. But when you've got 2 screens, you can use that whole additional screen to surface, relevant controls and information about the photo that's being edited, for example. And the other cool use is for gaming. So if you have game, and a lot of games are used to being rendered in a landscape mode, suddenly you've got a whole screen that you can use for a controller. So that's a really neat experience as well. And game builders can adopt that pattern right in their applications. So that's a quick look at what you can do to your application's user experience to take advantage of dual screens. For the rest of today, we really want to focus on how you can do that with Xamarin.Forms. So I'm going to quickly look at some of the content we have available to get you started and look at how you can get the Surface Duo Android emulator, which is available for free, so you can start today. And then Shane's going to walk through some actual code, which is always going to be kind of the most fun stuff. So let's quickly go over to the docs site and see where you can really get started. So this is docs.microsoft.com/dual screen. And this is really the first place that you're going to come to get started building apps for the Surface Duo. So if I click on the introduction to dual screen devices, this is a little bit more of the background that we just saw looking at the user experience patterns. So if I just skip down to the patterns, you'll see kind of more detail about what I just talked about. And if we just jump back home, the next most important thing is get the Surface Duo emulator preview. So if I click on that, it'll take us to the instructions for getting the emulator set up. As Xamarin developers, and I'm assuming that most of the folks watching today are Xamarin developers, you already have Visual Studio installed. You probably already have Visual and the Android SDK set up. So you've already got Android emulators on your system. And that's really the prerequisite for using the Surface Duo emulator image. You want Visual Studio installed, you want the Android SDK installed, and you want to be on the latest version of the Android SDK. So all of that's covered here in the docs. And if that's all the case, just scroll down to the Download the Surface Duo SDK preview, which will take you to the Microsoft Download Center. This is really simple. There's a big red download button there, and you choose your platform. So the emulator is available on Windows, it's available on Mac, it's available on Linux. Linux is not so helpful for the Xamarin developers, although Xamarin.Forms does have a community contributed backend for Linux. But if you're on Windows and using Visual Studio 2019, or if you're on Mac using Visual Studio for Mac, the emulator is compatible and you can start building dual screen apps with either of those. So click one of these and hit download, and it'll run you through the installer to get the Surface Duo emulator set up on your machine. So if we go back to the docs, once you've done that, you'll see we have some content on helping you get started with the emulator, interacting with it with ADB, the Android Debug Bridge. But really, you're not going to need any of that stuff because it works just like any other Android emulator. So you're basically at this point ready to get started. If we scroll down a little bit, you'll see we have content for all sorts of Android developers, including Kotlin and Java and React Native, and of course, Xamarin. So these links will take you into the Xamarin content for using new Xamarin controls that are Surface Duo specific, and will also in the future work on other foldable devices from other manufacturers, as well as links to the samples. And they'll also take you to the whole kind of raft of Xamarin content that's available on docs.microsoft.com/Xamarin. So, everything else that you want to do in your Android app, you'll get from the regular Xamarin documentation. So assuming we downloaded the Android emulator, what do we do next? So it's going to be slightly different to going straight into Visual Studio. The emulator will put an entry right in your start menu. So if I scroll down to Surface Duo emulator, there's actually two entries, one for people using Android Studio and one for people using Visual Studio. So as Xamarin developers, I want to click on the Surface Duo emulator for Visual Studio, and it's going to start up and look like this. So to get you moving with the emulator, you can click on an icon and start an app. And I want to share a couple of things with how to get started and use this. You might have noticed in the video, there was a quick sequence that showed you how to take an app from one screen to two screens. And that's a really simple, grabbing on this handle that appears at the bottom of the screen and dragging the app into the center of the two screens. And when you let it go, it's going to splash out and use up both screens. And the animation's taking a bit of a second on the stream, but you'll see Edge takes up both screens, and you can scroll and interact with Edge in any way. And you can then drag the app back to a single screen by grabbing that handle again and moving it to the left or the right. So that's really the most important gesture that you want to know to get familiar with using the dual screen experience. The other one, and this is a bit of a trick for people, is to enable rotation by default. So when you first install the emulator, and this is a fresh brand new install, auto rotation isn't on by default. So I'm just going to click that so that when we start testing our emulator and testing it in a vertical mode, apps and everything are going to rotate. And you're wondering, well, okay, how do I do that rotation? You can go into the extended controls screen. And what this enables you to do is simulate the hinge on the device. So let me just move that a bit. And you can actually simulate what it looks like when the device is folded or unfolded. So I can fold it all the way around, and it's like it's thin, and I can make it 180 degrees, and I can just hit the home thing to bring it back to a normal view. So you can simulate using the device in the real world, like with the folding and rotation. So that's built into the emulator. And yeah, just seeing some artifacts happen while it catches up to my view. So I just want to quickly jump into our first Xamarin app, and then I'm going to throw over to Shane. So because the Surface Duo by default is using gesture-based navigation, to see my app list, I just pull up from the bottom of the screen. And I have a flag facts app, which is actually based on our Microsoft Learn content about developing with Xamarin for the Surface Duo. So here's a flag. It's an Australian flag. What a coincidence. And it's a list detail app that has the traditional on a single screen stacked list and detail. And if I move that to the middle and let the app become spanned, it will show the list on the left and the detail on the right, kind of like I explained earlier when we talked about user experience patterns. So super simple example. This is what's possible with Xamarin and the Surface Duo. The link for the Learn course is going to be available in the content associated with this stream. And so you can go through that at your own pace. And I really don't want to take up any more time with theory. I want to throw it over to Shane, who is going to talk a little bit more about, coding for Surface Duo and using Visual Studio. So Shane.
There we are. Hey, just wanted to say, great. Thank you very much, Craig. That was awesome. I love the way you can sort of drag things and it becomes available on both screens and bring it back. That was extremely cool. Hey, I just want a couple of things I wanted to say. If you're watching this on other platforms, please join us at aka.ms/learntv, where we have some polls that we appreciate answers for. Also, I posted the link that Craig was referring to, and also any questions or anything you have there, we're monitoring that, and happy to share those during the presentation or after the presentation. So please do join us over there, aka.ms/learntv, and we'll take it away, Shane.
Hello. All right. So this is Shane in unmuted form. All right. So yeah, so let's start diving into some of the code samples so we can put a lot of the things that Craig was sort of demonstrating to visual use here. So this is one of the popular scenarios that he was talking about here, was this list details scenario. So this is a really helpful case for the Duo because this is a very popular paradigm where you have, say, a set of items and you want to navigate to those. But the cool thing that the Duo lets you do is it lets you expand these concepts out across the page here, right? So you can basically transform your view so that it makes use of both of these panes here. And then as a developer, you can detect when these pivots occur and then sort of adapt your application here. So you can see this, what this here is using, is it's using a two-pane view here that it basically kind of switches to once you go into the two screens. And then once it kind of flattens down into a single screen, then it changes to using a like a navigation page. So it's a really useful way to optimize across your spaces here. And then, so to sort of tap into a lot of those things, we can kind of look at the features that Xamarin.Forms exposes. So at the core of a lot of this behavior is what's called a two-pane view. And so the name here is inspired from the UWP and WinUI control. So if you're familiar with the two-pane view that's part of UWP, it's basically it's a symmetrical API and behavior as to the implementation on UWP. So it's a really nice control that you can use cross-platform. So that's where sort of like the Xamarin use case really becomes helpful, is because you can use this two-pane view on your iOS apps, your Android apps, or even your UWP apps. So it really lets you kind of tailor your behavior to what's thought of as like adaptive design, which is really nice because you can do all these different things to sort of to articulate how you want your content to lay out. So you might want to have it on the screens, or if like say you're in a case like this where you want it to you want to highlight specific content, you know, you can change basically the type of behavior that you're seeing here, and then you can also sort of change your pane lengths. See here, so this is changing the size. So you can do a lot of different things here as far as trying to set up exactly how you want your view to look. So like here, if we switch this to back to being our left and right panes, you can see if I split this across views, it automatically detects this hinge space here and lays out your content. So any content that you place inside your panes, inside pane 1 here and pane 2, automatically gets split across the view, which is it's a really nice way to just easily dual screen up your devices. Plus, it also makes your other applications adaptive if need be. So you can use this for, say, like iPads. If you want to influence the way a screen looks when it's an iPad, or even like a UWP app. So like right back here, I have the exact same, this same page here on a UWP app where it's basically adapting the design. So as you can see here, I've set it so when it gets to a certain width, see 781 here, when it gets to a certain width, 781, it changes the layout here. So this is the same control. So this is a Xamarin.Forms app here, and this is a Xamarin.Forms app here. So this is both running the same code, which is really nice because you can do something like this, say, on an iPad or whatever sort of device that you want. See? Nice. And the nice thing about the two-pane view is that it's not just sort of it's not just a full page type control. So if you have something that you're wanting to span across a divide, it doesn't have to take up the page. So the two-pane view is always aware of where it is on the screen, and it'll always lay out the content so that you have one on the left side and one on, well, it'll always lay out the content so the content is never obscured by the hinge, is how I should put it. So for example, here you'll see a Xamarin.Forms grid. I've basically set a margin on the two-pane view and centered it so that you get sort of this off-centered two-pane view. And then it automatically sizes your width here for your left component and the width on the right component here. So yeah, so it's a really helpful control if you have any sort of content you want to you want to set up here. So and then so that's one of the APIs that we have. There's a lot of other sort of Xamarin.Formsy APIs that we've added to help you sort of get perspective, even if you don't want to use the two-pane view. So we have this class that we've created, and I'll show you kind of how we have this working with shell. You'll see how this, when this flyout comes out, it fills this entire screen here. So I'll kind of show you how that implementation works. But we have this class, dual screen info, and basically what it does is it gives you the whole perspective of the application here. So you can make decisions based on the state of your application. So what you'll notice here, for example, with shell, is that if I open this flyout, it fills the whole view, right? Now, if I rotate here and go here, see, now it's only the height of this view here. Then if I scroll back this way and I posture over here, then it just goes back to being the normal the normal width there. So it's really neat the types of behaviors that you can sort of start pulling in. So for example, to do all of that behavior that I just kind of demonstrated is basically just this code right here. So what we have in Xamarin.Forms is we have this static class, current, which is basically a window scoped perspective on the state of your application. And then what you can do is you can just watch for these different property changed events to then pivot the way that you want things to react. So what you can do here now, so what I'm basically doing here is I'm checking the span mode. So Craig touched on this, but to sort of highlight this as well, you can see wide mode here. So wide mode is like when I grab this here and I spread it across the hinge. When you have the wide mode, I'm setting the width to be the size of the spanning bounds. So the spanning bounds are the size, it's a rectangle that basically describes this, and it's a rectangle that describes this. So it's going to be, it's a two-dimensional, it's an array with 2 elements, single dimensional. But yeah, so there's the spanning bounds here that you have to sort of give you this useful information. So that's really nice on the shell side, because we also added these APIs in Xamarin.Forms 5 where you can size the flyout as well. So you'll see when I make it tall, I'm just making the flyout the same height. And then when I'm going back into a single posture mode, so you can see the other mode here is single pane. So single pane is basically when it's occupying a single screen. So when it's occupying a single screen, it's just saying, hey, just go back to your default behaviors here. So yeah, some neat stuff you can kind of detect on the on your application there. So to kind of continue along the grounds with the shell demo here, another thing that we added in 5.0, you can see kind of a nice sample of it here in the drag and drop feature. This is just kind of a basic example of dragging and dropping box views between 2 different bindable layouts. So if you look at the drag and drop page, it's fairly simple. It's using a 2-pane view. So the 2-pane view is used to separate out the 2 pages here. And then each one of them has a stack layout that it's using with a bindable layout. And then we use this really helpful drag and drop gesture recognizers to basically drag and drop the controls between the different sides. And so kind of one neat use case for this, I want to sort of highlight sort of the out of application behaviors that you can do here with cross application behaviors that you can do with Duo, which are really neat. So what you'll see here in Shell, what I've done is I've set up this flyout header here, this flyout header image. So if you look, basically all this image is it's just an image it's an embedded Android resource. So it's a Surface Duo PNG. And all I've done to enable this drag and drop behavior, see if I click this, I can drag out, I can drop there, and see it drops this URL into the navigation bar here. So you can use this for a lot of text-based images and things of that nature. So yeah, so it's neat. You kind of get this cool drag and drop behavior out of the box. And if you look at the implementation, it's effectively just adding this drag gesture recognizer. And then because this is an image, what I've basically done here is I've set the data. So I've set the data for the package being dragged just to a URI. And then so now the native platform knows how to take that data piece and package that up into something that the native operating system understands, that it's able to then articulate out with drag and drop. So yeah, drag and drop does this nice. You can see how it clips the image for you. So you get this kind of nice drag and drop behavior. Yeah, so that was added in Xamarin.Forms 5.0. So you get some really nice features. Yeah, you get a lot of really nice out of the box features with those with Xamarin.Forms and the 2-pane view. So a couple of the other things that we can kind of talk about are the 2-page. So this is a scenario where you're wanting to use, say, like a reader, for example, where you have an application that, like Kindle, for example. So as you can see, the way this pivots is that this is now pivoted to like a full screen. And if I scroll this way, you see now it's gone to where it's like on 2 different pages here. So this is really neat because this is using a lot of the features of our collection view here, which has a lot of really neat APIs for just making your content fit whatever kind of layout you want. So basically, all I'm really doing here is that we have a collection view, and then I'm binding the item spacing to the collection view to the hinge width. So the item spacing here, as you can see, is just the spacing here, and I'm binding that to that so that the spacing between the elements is going to be larger than the hinge, right? So I mean, you can kind of see that it's double it because that's why it's not up against it. But yeah, so that's basically all you really have to do. And then what you do is you can just kind of pivot it based on information. So you'll see on the 2-page control, what I do here is I instantiate a dual screen info class. So this is the other neat thing about the dual screen info, is that you can instantiate the dual screen info against any visual element in Xamarin.Forms. So you'll see that what this layout is it's the grid. So what I've done is you can see this is a grid here. I've instantiated dual screen info over the grid. So this will tell me anytime this grid is occupying space across the hinge. So now I can act on that information, right? So I can wire up these property changed events, and then I can update the features of the collection view based on what's been changing, right? So if you pivot, so if you rotate right, basically it changes to a different orientation. See, it changes to a vertical item layout with no snap point types and the alignment start. So that's really helpful for being able to really easily kind of shape your content. So you'll see with a fairly minimal amount of code, it's able to adapt this content to the 2-pane view. To a Microsoft Duo. So, and then the neat thing here is it's not even really using a 2-pane view, right? Like all you're really doing is using the classes to inform your code of how you want to adapt your layouts. So, so there's a lot of things we wanted to sort of build in without you having to use the 2-pane view. So let's see, to kind of walk through a few more of these samples here. The companion pane, for example, this is another scenario where it's using the 2-pane view and a couple of forms controls here. So what you'll see is that we have this nice carousel view over here. And the carousel view also, which has gone stable in Xamarin.Forms 5.0 for use, is really nice because you can just, I've basically just put this inside a 2-pane view. So the carousel view here is inside the left component, and the collection view here is inside the right component over here, right? So so I'm basically just using the collection view as like a selection point. So, and it's really helpful too, because a lot of these samples are also part of the Xamarin Android samples in the same repository, so you can kind of see the difference in how those things are put together. But yeah, so it's nice. Have these nice little visual states for when an item gets selected to set green and things like that. So yeah, companion pane. And then let's see. So let's see, I showed you that one. Yeah, so that's kind of the core of the APIs that I wanted to kind of wanted to demonstrate, as far as where you can kind of 2-paneify your applications. So and then so that's kind of the root of the examples there that I have. I can kind of touch on a few other things since it seems like we have a little bit more time. So a couple of the other features that we've added, and actually let me see if I can pull this up. Is that we've also have sets of visual state triggers that you can use within the 2-pane view, which are really helpful, that I don't have in this sample, unfortunately. But I don't know if Craig, do you have the adaptive triggers docs by chance? Can you look that up and then we can kind of talk through those?
Let me take a look.
Yeah, the adaptive triggers. So one of the things that we added in Xamarin.Forms when we first released the dual screen stuff were these really nice adaptive triggers that I unfortunately haven't updated this demo for. But so that what that lets you do is it lets you sort of do XAML-based, triggers to update your content. So you'll see here, like with shell, since what I've done here is I'm articulating all of this code here inside of the code behind. The cool thing you can do sort of with the adaptive triggers, which also come from the sort of the UWP implementation, is that you can attach those to your Visual State Manager and use that to adjust the how things are going to be displayed. So we're able to kind of pull up those docs, Craig?
Yeah, so if we can switch over to my share, I've just pulled the Xamarin.Forms dual screen triggers docs up. So there's actually a good XAML example right there that demonstrates the span mode trigger is it in a single pane? Is it wide? Is it tall? And then the action is you've made this is a very pretty simple sample. You're changing the background color via the setter. So, it's a pretty simple example, but it's using the state of the device and the app. Is it on one screen? Is it on both? And is it both sideways or both tall? And just reacting to that with the property, the background color in this case. But as you were kind of leading in, it's actually a pretty sophisticated way to declaratively control, all sorts of stuff about your app without, lots of if then else checking for what state the app's in, how many screens is it on, and, making some change to the layout. You can represent it all declaratively and just trust that it's going to work.
Yeah, it's neat because you can just specify those on the individual layouts, which is really neat. You don't have to. It's not just. You can kind of pick and choose whether you want to do it as part of the entire window. So as you'll see, there's the dual screen triggers that have sort of like the span mode state triggers, and then there's the one lower down, which are like the windows. So it's nice for just applying to those sort of individual ones. I pulled one in here on one of our grids, so I'm going to see if I copy and pasted the code correctly. But
okay, so. Looks like we're switching back to your screen. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if this pulls in kind of on the fly with sort of coding this in. Let's see.
It's a demo. What could go wrong?
Yeah. So I don't know if let's see. Did any questions come in by chance that we can grab, or just kind of pulling this through?
I haven't seen any questions. A lot of greetings from different countries. It's great to see those folks saying hello. Hey, Brian.
Hey, yeah, no, we got some feedback. Just mostly people saying hello. We do have some polls. I wanted to invite attendees. If you go to aka.ms/learntv, right now we have some polls open and available. So if you have some feedback for us on how you're using Surface Duo and Xamarin and .NET for mobile, and you have any suggestions, please do include those as well. Any questions? We have the polls open as well. So, but no questions at the moment.
Okay. All right. Cool. Let's see if I can pull in the visual state triggers here. See if my hot reload is gonna.
Love hot reload.
Yeah, I don't remember if I have it quite enabled on here. It says that it was successful, but let's see. There we go. All right, let's.
Wow, that's also the power of shell. You've just added one thing and then suddenly, boom, it's like wired up and ready to go.
Yeah, I don't. Let's see. What are the states of the? Oops. Let me see. There we go. All right, cool. It's nice when you just paste code and it works that you haven't even tested, right? So yeah, so you'll see here that the way that this state trigger code basically works is that it has these different background colors that it's setting. So what I've done is I've attached this dual screen to the grid. So the grid here is the full element here that's covering the screen. And as you can see, it transitions between the different state triggers. So here you can see now I've gone to a single pane and it's set to green. And then if I go to wide, it goes to red. And then if you go, I actually didn't test this, so hopefully it goes to purple. Yeah, cool. See, it goes to purple. Yeah, so that's really neat for being able to easily sort of apply adaptive design ideas. So, and there's a lot of different state triggers that we even added outside of dual screen that kind of came with the whole dual screen push. But yeah, the dual screen was kind of, it's a really good use case. And then you can also do it based on the window, like I was saying before, if you don't want it to be based on how this stuff is working. So yeah, I think those were that was the main missing feature that I kind of remembered as far as the dual screen stuff. So
yeah, that's a really good example because it brings something to the story from Xamarin.Forms that isn't available in like the default Android experience. So you compared the fact that a lot of these examples, we have one-to-one implementation. So we have the Xamarin.Forms one in the sample app that you're showing. But if you go to GitHub, you'll also find projects for Xamarin.Android, which implement all of these patterns, but just in C# on top of the Android SDK. So the code looks slightly different because you don't have all of the declarative UI available in Xamarin.Forms. You're doing it all just with regular, I should say, just Android APIs. But something like this is something that Xamarin.Forms brings to the party. This and two-pane view, dual screen info, gives you a lot more power and flexibility with a lot less code. So if you're going to start out building an app or you're going to enhance an existing app for two screens, if you're in Xamarin.Forms, you're way ahead of the curve because you've got all these additional features that are going to help enhance for dual screen. But like you pointed out with the two-pane view, it lets you take that code to tablets and desktop as well, and also for it to squeeze down onto single screen devices where you've got the sample open now. You can have pane priority set to 1 or 2 where you can share them both on the same screen. It's super flexible.
Yeah, and then the other one, the other one here to highlight is the hinge angle. So that was the other one I didn't touch on. The emulator, the simulator emulators now have a nice posture where you can sort of play with different layouts here and you can see kind of like that this hinge angle just kind of updates. So the way we have that, let me sort of pull in the code. Let me grab that one. So that there's basically on the dual screen info, there's a get hinge property. Let me see, where did I put that?
Yeah, actually, that was the other thing I thought we could talk about is the fact that you can also measure the hinge. Like, so you can do something with that angle, so you can understand if people are using the device this way or any other way.
Yeah. So the hinge angle, so that's another API here that's on the dual screen info. So that gives you, you can either do it, you can do it a couple ways, because the way it's done natively is that it's all very on demand with the way that you're requesting the hinges. But you can either subscribe to an event, and then the event here will listen for every time that the hinge is changing, or you can just sort of ask for it yourself if you need to kind of understand. So yeah, there's a slight performance hit with listening for the hinge angle, but it's nothing too crazy. So that's kind of why there's those two different aspects. But
yeah, under the covers, it's just implemented as a regular sensor in the same way that you would have, well, temperature, or I don't know about temperature, but pressure and all of those other things that are exposed through the Android operating system. The hinge angle is just a sensor exposed through that same mechanism. And so what Xamarin.Forms has layered on top of that is just an API to expose it. So same caveats. If you're pinging and checking a sensor a lot, you're incurring something that you wouldn't be if you were just checking it once.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a nice way to kind of get all your information here in sort of one little spot. So and then here we added this is landscape is kind of just a little bit of a helper because the way a lot of the native operating systems sort of process landscape, when it's kind of in this sort of mode or the other mode, it's kind of misinterpreted natively. So this is kind of a useful API just to get a small perspective on something, so that like you sort of have a stable concept. So for example, where's the rotation here? Yeah, here we go. So like, see, this is landscape, and then like this also kind of gets reported as being kind of held as a landscape. This is the positioning of the device. So so just sort of a small little helper on that one. But yeah, so I mean, that's the dual screen stuff in the nutshell. There's a few that we have a lot of samples, the Microsoft samples. There's a Xamarin TV samples. There's I don't know if Craig, did you get the Sketch 360 app in the links by chance?
No, actually, can we switch back to my screen? And yeah, we can look through those in the docs. So this was the last slide that I prepared, which kind of continues on from the discussion we've just been having, which is really intended to try and kind of focus on the fact that when you're adapting your app for the Surface Duo, we're not saying, you necessarily spend all this time doing all this work and it only benefits the Surface Duo. The benefit of the two-pane info control is that it has that really nice proportional or a configurable behavior that applies whether it's on a single screen, small, or a large screen like a iPad or a desktop if you're projecting it onto Windows or onto a tablet of some sort. So the two-pane view gives you the ability to, wrap up your existing views that you might have, and the Microsoft Learn module that I mentioned, and as again, links are in the show notes, and I'll quickly jump over to it. But that module is about taking an existing app, wrapping some of the existing views that you have in a two-pane view, and then deciding what they need to look like on a single screen and on a larger screen, such that you get the benefit also of them looking nice with a foldable device like the Surface Duo, and there will be other foldable devices in future. So I just wanted to quickly share that. So if we go and look at the samples, like you mentioned, actually, we'll just go back to the docs homepage here. So I mentioned, we cover all of these technologies, and each one of them has their own set of samples. So we'll click into that. We have two amazing, like fully baked app samples, like in addition to what Shane's been showing, which is our dual screen demos, and there's no food delivery, which is a demo, and the Xamarin Android native version of these, which is another demo. They're really going to be useful for people to poke around at the code and see it, operating on its own. But we have these two samples. So Xamarin TV, which you mentioned, I think we featured that at Build last year. So
that was our launch demo. That was kind of our dog fooding while we were building it up. So that's what's really cool about, like, if you look at the Sketch 360 and the Xamarin TV app, all of that is implemented purely using the two-pane view. So it's not using any sort of it's just kind of creating its own navigation and everything like that. Like, it's just a content page with a two-pane view. So it's really cool to see how much you can influence your design to really excel on the Duo device. So yeah, the Xamarin TV has a lot of really good examples, and the Sketch 360 one's amazing. So, and that's on Google Play if you want to pull it down. Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, Xamarin TV had some of those adaptive triggers that you were talking about.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the things, like, as we're developing it, it's like, this is too hard. All right, we need to get state triggers into forms. All right, let's get those put together. Yeah. So yeah, and then the Sketch 360 has similar ones as well. So you'll find that being able to express that stuff through the Visual State Manager is way simpler than trying to put all your scenarios in code. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, those are both downloadable, like they're on GitHub, so you can pull them down and get them running in Visual Studio and deployed to your Surface Duo emulator or any device that you have. You know, there's Xamarin apps so that they run in other platforms as well. But like Shane said, Sketch 360 is, you know, it's more than a demo. It's a fully baked app that lets you draw on like a rotating canvas that, you know, you pan around and draw, and it projects it into like a sphere that you're looking around the inside of. So when you're moving around, it's taking your 2D drawing and making it a 3D kind of bubble. It's really amazing, and it works really well on dual screens because you draw on one and preview on the other. You know, horizontally or vertically makes no difference. It works really well because it's pen based. So if you're using a Surface Pen, you can draw on the device. It's an app that was previously built for Windows and worked on Windows with pen input there. So as a starting point for any app that you might want to build, it's got a lot of sophistication, including that pen input, which you can pull out and put into your own apps. So fully functional, like I said, downloadable on Google Play for anyone with Android or other platforms. And source code is fully open source as well, thanks to Michael who built it and the Garage program here at Microsoft. So 2 really good samples to kind of get started with.
Yeah, it's great. It even has like this whole inking library that he built next to it. So like even if you want like a cool inking library to use just for anything, to really pull into your application to draw with, there you go, Xamarin.Forms inking. So yeah, it's this whole library for that's I forget the API it's next to, but it's an API copy of one of the UWP libraries that's similar to it. So yeah, I mean, this whole library here, and we've looked at releasing this one too as its own separate thing. But yeah, if you have a need for like an inking library that works on Android, and I think he was working on some iOS stuff with it, but I wasn't sure the state of that. But yeah, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, very cool. So it seems like we're getting close to time.
Yes.
I guess one of the things. Hey, Brian, welcome back.
Hey, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We got a few more.
Yeah, I was going to wrap up basically with our blog. So devblogs.microsoft.com/Surface Duo. Again, links in the show notes. So this is a blog that, you know, we publish every week, and we try and touch on all of the different platforms that we support for Android development for the Surface Duo, whether it's Xamarin or Java and Kotlin or web or anything like that. So check out that. We're at Surface Duo Dev on Twitter. So if you follow the Twitter account, you'll get notifications about the blog, which is great. This particular blog that we did last week is interesting because it's another example of like a very minimal change you can make to your Android apps to help them support 2-screen, particularly if you're using just Xamarin Android and not Xamarin.Forms. Like there's a really small like 1-line change you can make when you're opening activities, which gives a hint to the operating system to open them on the other screens. So if you have a Xamarin Android app and you're thinking about what's the minimum change I can make to start being, you know, hip with the dual screen, just using this flag activity launch adjacent is something that you can do, like super easy, and suddenly your app is going to start, you know, expanding over the 2 screens when it can. And then of course you can go to town, you know, with whatever other implementation things you want to add as well. So to wrap it up, we have, you know, the Surface Duo emulator, and we have the Surface Duo device, you know, for those of you that are lucky enough to go and grab one. For everyone that's watching, if you want to get started, download the app, download the emulator, or you know, get yourself a device, test your app on it. You know, you've got Visual Studio, just run it up and see how it works on this one screen.
Cool. Hey, we're pretty much out of time. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you very much. I wanted up on my screen now. I am putting links to all of the links that we've discussed today. So there's one place you can go, aka.ms/the_launch_Surface Duo 1. And there's a QR code there as well that you can see on the screen, hopefully right now. And if you go there, you'll find all the links that we discussed today. I really appreciate everyone joining. And thanks so much for the launch space.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much.